Good morning. Jeff and I are here today to share a little bit of our experience last year in building a home with Habitat for Humanity in Guatemala. We were a member of a 12-person team that went to Guatemala in March of last year to participate in a Habitat for Humanity Global Village home build. This presentation reflects our personal experiences and findings, and not a sanctioned or sponsored by Habitat for Humanity event. The name Guatemala is from the Mayan for land of trees. It's about the size of Pennsylvania, located along the Pacific Ring of Fire. It has many volcanoes and is subject to frequent earthquakes. It is very mountainous with limited land that is suitable for agriculture. The climate is tropical, quite hot in the lower elevations and a bit cooler in the highlands. The population is about 17 million. Some 40% of the population are indigenous Maya. About 55% are Ladinos of mixed Indian and European ancestry, and some 5% are Criollos, descendants of primarily Spanish immigrants who have not intermarried with the indigenous peoples. Guatemala's population is very young. Half of all Guatemalans are under the age of 19. Since its discovery by the Spanish, much of Guatemala's history is a sad story of brutality and exploitation, but that's something to be talked about another time. The country is quite poor. Although the annual GDP per person is estimated at $8,000 per year, the median family income is approximately $3,000. 1/4 of the population is considered extremely poor, with family incomes in the range of $2 to $3 per day. 1/2 of all children under the age of 5 and 70% of all Mayans suffer from chronic undernutrition. This is the highest rate in the region and the 4th highest in the world. The oligarchs, primarily from the Criollo families, at the top 75% own 75% of the arable land and consume over 50% of the country's income, while 1 million children ages 5 to 17 are in the labor force. Jeff's going to show about some slides about the conditions.
Okay, Bruce, first slide. We open with one of the iconic views of Guatemala. This is Lake Atitlan, and that big old mountain in the back is a volcano. Next. Next slide. Is this easier? Can I? Hello? 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 Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here's a typical rural home. They sort of cobble them together from whatever they can scratch up. Next slide. There's another view of one of the haciendas of the local poor. We saw hundreds of these. They look like something that would be in a squatter camp somewhere. Next, please. Here's a couple of youngsters. They've been out cutting firewood, and needless to say, they don't go to school. Next. The best dressed, best equipped folks that we saw in Guatemala were either soldiers or policemen. This soldier is, he's guarding a parking lot. Next, please. Here's a lady taking home her firewood. She'll probably chop it up and use it to cook supper. Next, please. We visited a little village, and this lady and her family have a little backyard kiln. And what they do is they go out into the countryside several miles to get firewood to bring it in and to get clay. And this lady is crafting these tortilla baking pans. They sell those for about 70 cents a piece. Next, please. This is her mother. We don't know how old she is. She's not as old as she looks. She's been making these. She crafts these pots out of the clay, and she's been doing this so long that her hands and feet are like permanently gnarled, let's put it that way. But this is how they make their living, just out of the dirt. Next, please. Okay, Linda, take over.
Habitat for Humanity is very active in Guatemala. Approximately 100,000 housing units have been either built or retrofitted through Habitat programs. Your county's Habitat has a partnership arrangement with Guatemala and donate 10% of its revenue from the restore to them. Although Guatemala has virtually no building or safety codes, Habitat does. The buildings are designed to withstand earthquakes, and construction is strictly monitored by Habitat. The houses are constructed of concrete blocks and are generally 350 to 450 square feet. They will have a small 25 square foot bathroom with a shower, toilet, and lavatory sink. The toilet will go into a proper leaching system. Each room will have a ceiling light, a window, and an electrical outlet. Construction costs for a house range from $3,000 to $5,000, excluding land costs. Of this, less than $1,000 is for labor, and the rest is for materials. Without help from a group like ours, the entire job will be done by a mason and his helper and takes about 45 days. The mason earns about $13 a day and his helper about $8. They put in 10-hour days, 6 days a week. These are considered good wages for Guatemala. All the work is done manually. No power tools or equipment of any kind. There is a pile of concrete blocks, a pile of 1-inch stone, a pile of unsifted gravel, some rolls of wire, some rebar rods, and bags of cement. The mason's tools all fit into wheelbarrows. I'm just going to show some slides for the construction.
Next, please. This is where we get to the really riveting part of the presentation, is to show the details of construction. Yeah. This is what the land looks like when you first start, before you start digging the ditches. In the wintertime, it's very dry, and the ground it's like, you don't dig it with a shovel, you dig it with a pickaxe. And next slide, please. Here it shows where a team has managed to dig 3-foot trenches to make a footing for the building. Next, please. This shows you a little more detail of the footing. I would say digging out and building the foundation is about 80% of the work of these things. You'll notice that the rebar sticking up out of the footing. The way these are constructed is that there's a frame of rebar and concrete around all of the different rooms, so that when there's an earthquake, you could tip this house upside down and it wouldn't fall apart. Next, please. These pictures are from 2 different bills. A team went in 2015 and then one in 2017, so some of these are from 2015. This shows one of the construction sites where we had very constricted land, and what we have here is organized chaos. Next, please. Here the mason, we've got the footing in, and now the mason is laying up the foundation blocks. Next, please. And here's some old guy doing backfilling of the foundation. Next, please. And here's a Chiquita. She's putting crushed block into the top of the foundation in preparation for the next layer going on top of that. Next, please. This is a site from 2015 where the foundation is up to ground level, and we're ready to start actually assembling the walls. Next, please. All of these concrete blocks, naturally, they dump them off at the truck about I don't know, a football field away from where you actually have to build, so you have to lug all the blocks over. But this is in preparation for the mason to start working. Next, please. All of the concrete and mortar is mixed by hand. They just throw the ingredients on the ground and mix in a little water, and muscles go to work. Here's a very eager crew tackling concrete mixing. Next, please. I'm going to bore you to death with rebar assembly. Here's a couple of our team members. They're taking the long rods and assembling it with little bits and pieces of wire and whatever. In the U.S., when rebar comes to a construction site, it's all been assembled in a factory. Next, please. Not all jobs. One of the things is we're a pretty elderly group that goes, and some of the ladies in particular were concerned about, well, what can we do? We're not construction workers. Well, much of the work is, well, it's not that strenuous. It's cutting snips and pieces of wire and bending wire. And these two folks, they're cutting off the ends of a block in order to make a row of blocks that will be used for horizontal rebar. Next, please. This is one of the high-tech operations. They take an old tree stump, they pound in some nails, and then they use that as a jig to create little C-shaped clamps that go into the assembly of the rebar. So somebody will be sitting there bending this wire. Somebody has to cut it, somebody has to bend it, and literally hundreds of these go into the building. Next, please. Here's a rebar assembly plant. I told you I was going to bore you with the rebar. Next, please. And here's a crew working on the rebar. In 2015, our team actually included 3 young ladies from UNE. When we went last year, I think the youngest was, 58? But you can see some of the 2 ladies sitting, they're doing snipping of wire and sifting of sand. Next, please. This young lady is the future homeowner of one of the houses. She worked with us all day long, and all day long she had her son on her back. One of the things that I particularly liked about Guatemala is the people's height. Due to malnourishment, I could look down on top of this lady's head. Next, please. This is one of the UNE girls. I think she's taking a break from sifting sand, and, well, I'm not sure what she's doing other than keeping the kid out of the road. Next, please. One of the beauties of working with the concrete is you mix it on the ground, and then you put it in 5-gallon buckets, and then you hump it over to wherever you're going. Here they're filling in the horizontal row, burying the rebar in the concrete. Next, please. This is a future toilet. Like I said, the mason and his helper do everything. They do the plumbing, they do the electrical, they do, obviously, the block work. Next, please. This is one of the mason's helper. Again, he's chopping block using the high-tech machete to cut out the end of the block. Next, please. You can see at this site, it's starting to look like a real house with the walls and whatever. Oh, by the way, this building site was at a little over 8,000 feet. And one of the things I learned the first day is the sun is very close, and there's not a lot between you and the sun. And the top of my ears after the first day looked like, I don't know, pork rinds, those pork rinds. Next, please. Here's our mason, and what he's doing is he's connecting the horizontal and the vertical rebar to make sure that everything's all joined together. Next, please. This is the bathroom now that it's been enclosed and sealed up. So there's plenty of room for a shower, a toilet, and a small sink. Next, please. This is our team assisting with the blocks, and you'll notice the gentleman in the hat was the fellow that organized the trip, and we desperately needed his supervision here, you can tell. Next, please. Here are a couple of the UNE girls helping one of the elder members. They're mixing mortar for to help the mason out. Next, please. I promise this is my last rebar. This shows the corner rebar, the intricacy. Everything there had to be cut from, the wires had to be cut, things had to be bent. We had to tie them together and assemble them. This took forever because there's miles of it, it seemed. Okay, next, please. Just another picture showing progress towards the end of our week. Next, please. And you can see he's now starting to get up. That's about as high as it's going to go, is where he's working now. Next, please. And this is our crew, one of our crews from 2015 at the end of our work week before we escaped. It doesn't look like we do a lot in a week, but what they tell us is because we do so much of the very time-consuming things like the sifting of the sand and the cutting and assembly of the rebar, we actually take 2 weeks off the construction schedule for the mason and his helper. Next, please. And here's our homeowner. She's, I think she's trying to figure out what she's going to do for drapes in the new house. I don't really know. And here's the family, or let's just say, here's the mortgagees of the house here. I think he worked in a metal fabrication shop, and she also does weaving, but that's, anyway. Okay, now we've got a couple of pictures next. These were two houses that we built and worked on in 2015, and this is what they ended up looking like. This is the one earlier on where I showed the organized chaos. That was turned into this house. Next, please. And the house that you saw most of the construction on turns into this one. And next, please. Yeah, okay. Now, Linda's going to talk a little bit about schools and education that we also visited there.
Okay. As we had done on an earlier build 2 years ago, we collected as many books for young people as we could transport with our luggage and donated them to a school. On one of these days, we visited a local school where we donated the books and learned about Guatemala's education conditions. The government nominally funds school through grade 6. After that, families have to pay for private schools. An estimated 160,000 children eligible for grades 1 through 6 schooling do not attend for a variety of reasons. An estimated 20% of children 5 to 10 years old work. Many families are reluctant to send them to school if they cannot afford the standard school uniforms or supply them with materials and books. And some rural children are far from the nearest school and there is no public transportation available. Middle school tuition is in the $300 to $350 per year range, and high school costs roughly $500 per year. After the 6th grade, attendance falls off every step of the way through college. What we found at this school, the buildings are bare bones and the latrine is not a delight. The play area is a concrete pad surrounded by wire fence laced with barbed wire that is open to the sun and rain. We were there in March when it was 80 degrees. The school year runs from January to October, so much of the time the temperature is 100+ degrees, and the tropical sun blazes down on the concrete and fills the classroom with extra heat as well. The local families have been trying to raise the funds to install a sunroof over the play area. They have started by installing some concrete posts, but they have been unable to go further as they're just too poor. We as a team were determined to try to help. We were able to raise $3,000 to fund the materials for the sunroof at the school in St. Augustine. It will be like a somewhat less elegant version of the Waterhouse Center. Jeff's going to show some slides of the school.
Next, please. This is a gang of kids at one of the schools we visited. This is on, right?
Yes.
These kids are, they're very well behaved, but they're antsy little kids. Next, please. At one of the schools, this is the kids finally getting a look at the books. Even though all the books are in English, they don't care. They're just fascinated by the things. Next, please. After displaying the books and giving out some candy and some pencils and things, you'd think it was Christmas. The kids kind of went nuts, and they wanted to hug us all the time. So it was pretty cool. Next, please. This is the inside of the 6th grade classroom at the school in St. Augustine. It doesn't look that bad, but boy, it's hot there. Next, please. This is out in the outside where we were presenting the books, and one of the teachers read one of the books to the kids, and our guide translated into Spanish. For kids of this age to actually pay attention for as long as they did was amazing. Next, please. Yeah, this shows the playground, and you can see how that might really heat up those little rooms. Next, please. And this is a progress report that they sent us on the sunroof that they're building. So we funded the girders and the materials to go on the roof. So we're hoping we'll get a picture of the finished product pretty soon. Okay, that's it. You're up.
I think we also were going to mention that apparently not only are they using this for a playground, but the community is going to use it for a lot of cultural things, meetings and things like that for the whole community. So there are other opportunities to help with Habitat. We learned that there are improvements that they try to provide, including smokeless stoves. Many homes have unvented stoves. They're basically outdoor stoves, and many of them have very serious respiratory and eye problems. Most of them, if they're not a Habitat home, then they don't have indoor plumbing, so they need decent sanitary latrines, simple water filtration systems. Virtually all water in Guatemala is seriously polluted. Our team donated funds to install a smokeless stove in the house next to the construction site because the woman there was kind enough to let us use her facilities, and so we were happy to do that for them. Volcano relief. The recent volcano outside Antigua destroyed several villages, and there is no FEMA in Guatemala. Habitat York County is currently raising funds to make a special donation at the end of this month to provide relief to those whose homes were destroyed. In summary, Guatemalans are incredibly hardworking, tough people. The poverty can seem overwhelming, but Habitat is doing what it can to help.